And you can find them on YouTube, and I'm sure you can purchase their CDs. Do people even purchase CDs anymore? You can download their content online. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to have a little fun. Christmas is coming up. It's going to be a little fun. Hopefully it'll be somewhat educational. For those of you who base your understanding on what the nativity scene looks like from yards in your neighborhood, you're probably going to be a little confused because I'm sad to say, for those of you who purchased those nativity scenes and placed them out in your yard, those are not biblically correct. At least some aspects of it. Again, the Gospels weren't meant to give us a minute-by-minute account of Jesus' life. They kind of skip around here and there. And so if you're not careful, you're led to believe that the timing, the chronological timeline may be a little off. And so you're about to find out today, or I'm going to find out, or we're going to find out just how well you know the Christmas story. And so we'll do this. And then if we have a little time left, which I hope we will, I want to kind of talk a little bit about our sermon and what does the birth of Jesus mean for us today. But I want to go ahead and spend a little time doing this so we can get through it. So the first question is, for those of you who are online and not with us, I apologize. You do not have one of these in front of you, but I will read them. There's 20 questions. They're all true, false, and I will read them as we go along, and then you'll have an opportunity to yell at your screen what you think the correct answer is, or, of course, you can input it into the Facebook comment section. But I just want you to know that you may be surprised that some of these that you thought you were sure about, you may be less sure about or totally wrong. Or you may ace it, Shirley Curley. That could happen. Okay, so question number 1. Joseph and Mary went from Nazareth to Bethlehem. True or false? True. Okay, so that's an easy one for several reasons, not the least of which it's one that we actually just read earlier, that they headed from Nazareth to Bethlehem. Bethlehem is also known as what? The city of David. Okay? Why did they travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem? For the census. Okay, so this is going to be a really long trip, folks. Obviously, there's no airplanes, there's no Ubers, there's no taxis, there's no vehicles. They probably, if they had a donkey to ride on, they probably would have only had one. And you can guess who would have been on that donkey. And maybe that's what led to going into labor, is riding a donkey for that long. But they went from Nazareth, which is where, in what province? Galilee. Okay, so remember, we have down here, I don't know why I didn't put a map, maybe because I didn't think I would talk about this, but you have down at the bottom, you have Jerusalem, okay, and Bethlehem is not too far from there. Then you go up and you leave the province of Judea, and what province do you go into? Samaria, aka Oklahoma, right? So you travel through there, and then you get to what province? Galilee. Okay, so they had to travel probably like most would have done. They would have crossed over the Jordan and gone on the east side of it to avoid Samaria, and they would have gone down into Bethlehem. Okay, so this would have been a long journey, and especially if you are 9 months pregnant and you're either one walking or two riding on a donkey. I don't know which one would be more bumpy, but it would have been tough nonetheless. Okay, so it sounds like most of y'all got that right. And for those of you at home, keep score. Okay, number 2, when Joseph and Mary traveled, Mary rode a donkey, but Joseph walked. Okay, so what we're going to say is false, because we don't know. So we think that that's probably the way that happened. Lynn is doing the fit. Okay, you better get 20 out of 20 for this one. So we don't really know. In fact, a lot of these that we assume to be the case, we don't really know for sure. So we do know that they traveled. We don't know how they traveled, but we do know it did not involve 4 wheels or air conditioning or anything like that. This would have taken quite a while, several days to make that journey for sure. Okay. Woo, we're going through pretty fast. This is good. Number 3, the innkeeper told Joseph there was no room in the inn. Oh, I'm getting a lot of truths and lots of falses. If you're online, we want you to start typing in right now. But the answer is, according to Luke chapter 2, verse 7, is false. An innkeeper isn't mentioned in the Bible. How about that? Lynn, you're smoking it. You're 3 for 3. So now again, we assume that there was somebody there. We don't know who it was. Something that's really interesting that I learned that it might not even been an inn in the sense that we know it, that it could have been almost like a house, and the barn was kind of attached to the back, or where the manger would have been. In fact, this manger, there were times that they were placed inside the house, but just in a different place. But the bottom line is there was no room for baby Jesus, right? Okay, so some of you kind of got that wrong, but that's okay. We have 17 others. Maybe you can figure this out. And then when you go home, you can fix your nativity scene that's out in the front yard, which, by the way, I only have a little problem with the nativity scene. Beyond the fact that it's not usually biblical, it bothers me that we let Santa come in for milk and cookies and we leave baby Jesus on the front yard. I'm just saying that bothers me a little bit. We should have him outside. Okay, but number 4, Jesus was born on the same night Joseph and Mary arrived in Bethlehem. This is another one. If you go look, Luke's account is going to be the most accurate. It does not say we don't know when he was born. So we have to say we don't know, and therefore it is false by the fact that we can't say for a fact that it is true. It could have happened that way. We do know that it happened at night. Well, how do we know it happened at night? There was a star that was involved. But we don't know how long they would have been there. Okay, so are some of you a little surprised at what you thought you knew and what we actually really know? Are you surprised how many gaps we've had to fill in even with just 4 questions? Okay, number 5. Mary gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in cloths, and laid him in a manger. Okay, this is absolutely true. We get this from Luke chapter 2, verse 7. Okay, so somebody help me here. Somebody who didn't grow up around concrete and cement and sidewalks, and the only grass we had were parks and our little square in our front yard. So if you grew up around animals, somebody tell me, what's a manger? Okay, a feed trough. Okay, so what typically would go into a feed trough? Straw and hay. Barley. Okay, what was the trough typically made of? Wood. Typically made of wood. So this is where I want us to think about this, because again, we have oftentimes pictured like baby Jesus in this perfectly white cloth. He's laying in golden hay that's overflowing from this ornate manger that might be gold, and it's shining, and there's a light that's coming down, and it's very pristine, and it's very hygienic. How many of you would think of a cow and its eating habits and think, wow, that is just super clean? Well, we don't know if it's a cow. Okay, well, can you think of any animal that's eating? I watch my kids eat, and I'm like, really? Like, seriously, get a napkin. Like, I mean, you're thinking about this animal eating out of it. I mean, did that manger get placed in there the night before and is brand? I mean, if God is going to go the trouble to allow his son to be born in a very humble place, I'm not really sure that he would have made sure that a brand new trough just happened to be delivered the day before and had yet to be eaten out of. Do what?
If he was going to do that, he'd have put him in it.
Yeah, or in a palace. I mean, there's a lot of, this is about as low as you can get. So I just want us to point out the humble way in which God came into the world. There was no room for him in this little town, and he's forced to be laid in a manger that most likely has been used. They probably tried to clean it out the best that they could, but it probably smelled. It was dirty or wet, and they're placing grain in there. When I was in college, I decided to join this club, and we had to have an initiation. And one night they decided to pour grain sorghum on us. They also called it maize. And I don't know, all I know is there was a guy older than me who grew up on a farm, and he knew that if you left this grain sorghum or something in water for like a month, it turned into an awful smell. I mean, the most awful smell I've ever smelled in my life. Now, I'm not suggesting that's exactly what Jesus was placed in, but I don't think it's fair to say that it was inlaid with gold and smelled like potpourri. Like there was not, it was a very humble beginning. And that is going to go on throughout Jesus' early life and continue on through his ministry. He was born an illegitimate child of most likely a teenage girl. They were gone a large part of her pregnancy, right? She went to visit her cousin Elizabeth, who had their son, whose name was John. She comes back. Should she really have gone up to the census in her state? Probably not. Maybe they're worried she's about to give birth. Maybe they want to get out of town. Maybe she's in hiding as much as she can. But even as Jesus gets older and begins his ministry, there's going to be some comments made about who Jesus was and where he came from, and they're never placed in a positive light. Oh, Son of God, really? You were born before your mom and dad were even married. There's words that they used to describe people born in such a state. He was laid in, oh, really? You're a king, so you must have been born in a palace. Oh, you were at least born at home. No, you were traveling, you were in you were placed in a food trough where animals would eat out of. And your story is, your father is God, and this is how he brings you into the world. Like, none of that seems to really jive well. And this is the way that God chose to allow his son to come. Not only was it a dark time in the history of that nation and really in the history of the world, but it would only get worse when Jesus came into the world. It got a lot worse when Jesus came in the world. You talk about darkness and chaos and despair. Do you remember what happens not long after Jesus is born? Wise men are going to come through. The wise men come through. They see Herod, and Herod says, hey, tell me where he is. I want to go worship him too. Herod doesn't want to worship him. Herod wants to maintain his status for him and the legacy that will follow. And he learns of a new king, and that infuriates him. And when the wise men don't come back the way and tell him, he does a little calculations, and he decides, you know what? I'm going to make sure that this king doesn't make it out alive. And he sends out an order to kill all the baby boys 2 years and younger. Can you imagine the wails of the mothers and the fathers as newborn babies are taken away out of their arms and are killed? And that is all around the time that Jesus was then an infant/toddler. That was the turmoil that was going on. So Was there room for Jesus in the inn? No. Was there room for Jesus anywhere in the world? Not hardly. Can you imagine all of the mothers who said, let me have my baby, you take this other one? How many of them would gladly say, I don't want this Messiah that's coming. I would rather have my baby. And to see their babies pulled away from him was just a horrible time. Okay, that was number 5. Number 6, straw filled the manger where Jesus lay. Yeah, we just don't know. And I know when, I mean, my first response would say, well, of course there was. We don't know for sure. We assume that there was some kind of straw laid in there. Again, was it golden and beautiful and overflowing like we have on our nativity scenes? We don't really know. But the bottom line is the Bible does not say anything about this. And so I can't really give you a reference as to where it says that it's not in the Bible. I can't say, well, Luke chapter 2 says there wasn't straw in there. We don't have that. It just nowhere in the 4 Gospels is it mentioned that there is straw in there. Okay, number 7. Jesus was born on a cold winter's night. Yeah, it doesn't say. In fact, I know this is shocking. This is what I grew up hearing and why we didn't have Christmas trees in the church building that I worshipped as a child, is because there's pretty good reason to believe that Jesus was not born on December 25th. So
there's no actual record of exactly when Jesus was born.
no. We have very clear evidence as to when he was crucified. We don't know when he was born. Because at that time, I mean, we can kind of guess like around the time based on historians say when Herod would have issued the edict to have all the infants slaughtered. But as far as time of the year, we really don't know. So there's a couple ways that you can go with this. The first one is cancel Christmas. Okay, put down the Christmas trees, get rid of the ornaments, let December 25th be a normal day just like every other day. I'll say this, a couple things. I don't think it's ever bad to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Last Wednesday night, Lance, actually the last couple Wednesday night, Lance has kind of picked on, he always picks on me, but he was picking on me specifically because I'm kind of a Scrooge during Christmas time. And there are a few reasons. You know, we were going through a tough time in my family. There ended up being a separation and a divorce, and that made family times, especially Christmas, really awkward. And so for that reason, that was a little hard. Another thing is I lived in a very populated area and lived next to and actually worked right next door to, at that time, one of the busiest malls in Texas. Now it's changed a little bit. It's kind of even grown. But I grew up near the Parks Mall. It was always, I mean, I drove out of my driveway and I couldn't go a mile without hitting traffic, especially around the mall. And then they were always playing the jingles. And so that, I didn't really like Christmas because of that. But one of the biggest things is I just felt like that Christmas became very commercialized. And it was, if you've seen The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, that was my view of Christmas. I assumed it was all about the giving. I mean, I can remember when people started literally fighting with fists over a Tickle Me Elmo doll back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it really bothered me because I felt like this should be about the birth of Jesus, and it really has turned into how can I get what I want even at the cost of hurting someone else. And so I never really liked Christmas a whole lot, but I'll say this. If the rest of the world will entertain the idea about celebrating a day that is about the birth of Jesus, I am all for that. And so if that means we bring in 50 Christmas trees and we can celebrate with other people around the world who say, well, this may or may not be the day Jesus was born, but we're going to celebrate it, go for it. And with that in mind, I say, never take your Christmas tree down. Leave it up, and every day you wake up, you can celebrate the birth of Jesus. In fact, I haven't told my wife this, but I'm planning on keeping our Christmas lights on our house all year round. Because I not only can celebrate the birth of Jesus, why are you shaking your head? I can celebrate the birth of Jesus every day, and I don't have to climb up and take them down and then climb back up and put them back up in like 11 months. So that's my plan. So I want to challenge you all to do the same. If you have a Christmas tree, don't take it down. If you have Christmas lights, keep them up. So, yes, Ryan.
What about the electric bill?
Oh, that's okay. Jesus, I have LED lights, so they don't use much electricity. Electricity. Using less electricity can save the world, but so can celebrating the birth of Jesus. Both of them can do the same thing. Okay, so we don't know if he was born on a cold winter's night. There are people who say, well, because there were shepherds out, it was a time of year in which shepherds would have been out and they wouldn't have been out when it was cold. I know nothing about sheep or herding sheep, so I can't speak intelligently on that.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
Has anybody ever drawn a line from Bethlehem and just drawn on the same latitude around and see where it crosses?
No, I don't know that they have. Have they?
It comes real close to Hobbs and flows to Mexico.
Okay.
It's almost exactly the same distance from the north. It's really weird. If you draw a line, do that sometimes. Look,
Yeah.
we're almost on the same latitude as.
Yeah, we're on the same latitude. Okay, so something for you to think of. Another reason why we're really similar to Bethlehem is that we're on the same latitudinal line. Number 8, true or false? Animals stood next to the manger. False. We don't know that. And again, if there's a food trough there, I mean, they didn't put those things out for decoration. Okay, so likely there were animals. We don't know what kind of animals there would have been. There could have been. We just don't really know for sure. So again, I'm not saying you have to go and take the baby lamb from beside your nativity scene in your yard because say, well, biblically it didn't happen. I thought you'd find it interesting that we kind of make some suppositions about what took place and we don't really know for sure. Okay, number 9. The stable was in a cave. Yeah, false. We don't really know that. We don't know where it was. But a lot of scenes we see that, there's this little rock outcropping and he was up underneath. Okay, number 10. Joseph and Mary named Jesus the night that he was born. Okay, when was he named? Well, he would have been circumcised 8 days later, but when did he get his name? When did they determine his name?
When the angel told Joseph.
That's right. After he was given the name by an angel, actually before conception, and it was publicly confirmed. If you look in Luke chapter 2, verse 21, it's when he was given the name Jesus. And so you can look that up as well. But as far as we know, they weren't sitting around with a dry erase board trying to figure out what they were going to name their child. They already knew that. Don't ask me how I know that somebody would do something like that, because I wouldn't know. Number 11. Some of the animals woke the baby Jesus, but he didn't cry. You know that song, right? That, he woke up, but he didn't cry. Folks, he's a baby. Okay? And just to dispel another myth, I don't know, when people say, oh, look, he's sleeping like a baby. Like, what are they talking about? What kind of baby do they have that, sleeps like any normal pattern? See, there you have it right there. We have right on cue. He was a baby. As he got older, he displayed tendencies and emotions and feelings that every other human would have felt. We read throughout the Bible, he was hungry, he was tired, he was thirsty, he was in pain. Like, these are things that a normal human feels. People say, how did this happen? I don't understand. What many scholars will say is he was fully God and he was fully man. He was 100% of both. And so even though he was divine, he still was in a human body, and as a baby, he would have cried. I don't understand how that works out, because there are parents sometimes who will say later on in life, oh, my child was the perfect baby. That doesn't mean that the baby never cried. It doesn't mean that the baby never had a fever, colic, like have trouble eating. Like, we're not going to stand here or sit here and say, oh, Jesus was perfect in the sense that he never had an issue. Can he be perfect, Son of God, and miss the nail if he is in fact a carpenter, or his father was a carpenter? Could he have missed the nail with a hammer and hit his thumb? Or is perfect Jesus mean that, like, he had hand-eye coordination that only God could display? So, now what he did after he got hit with a hammer would divert from what most of us might do when we get hit with a hammer. But as far as, like, does that mean, like, he always did everything perfect and he never messed anything up, as far as, like, he always double knotted his shoes and he was always, early and on time, and I don't know how all of that worked. But we do know this. As a baby, a human baby, if he would have gotten woken up because an animal was making noise, he probably would have cried. Okay, so of course we don't know that either way. Okay, number 12. The shepherds were terrified when an angel of the Lord appeared to them announcing Christ's birth. Yeah, everybody's terrified. Yes. Yeah, everybody, it seems like, and this doesn't happen just at the birth of Jesus. All throughout, like, Jesus will come on scene after his death, burial, and resurrection, and he'll pop up in a room, and what's the first thing he says? Don't be afraid. Peace. So this happened with the angels. And again, everything would have seemed supernatural at that time. A couple of things. One of them is we get so used to our surroundings that we forget what it's like to live in a time without all of this. Okay? They didn't have ways to record music and play it back. They didn't have concerts with amplifiers and big speakers. They didn't have electricity, so they didn't have any type of lighting. The brightest light that you could get was a light that was created by a fire. So at nighttime, when you talk about this bright light shining, other than the sun in the daytime or a star at night, there is nothing. A bright light to them would have been something they never possibly could have imagined. It's nothing that they would have ever seen. And so for this to happen, they couldn't say, well, they see something going, oh, well, it's a plane going through the sky, or there's a light shining around, or none of that was there. And so those of you who live out in the country, you know a little bit more about light pollution, which basically means that when you're in the city and you want to go outside and look, it's harder to see the stars because all the lights that are around you, you get out there, it would have been dark. And by the way, my wife knows a little bit more about this. She's told me about this, but apparently what is known as the Star of Bethlehem is believed to have been two different planets that are in alignment. Do you remember which ones? Somebody remember which one? Jupiter and Saturn, and they're supposed to come back together tomorrow night. So, for those of you who want to go out and see a really bright light that you can't often see, I think I heard that the last time it happened was like 1247 or something like that. Yeah, 800 years. So, Lynn, this is going to be your last shot. Okay, I know you saw it once, but this is gonna be the last time. Okay, unless you want to outlive Methuselah. So I don't know when it's going to be. Early evening. So something that'll be interesting. Right after sundown. Right off in the west. Okay, so there's something you can look at tomorrow night. That's going to be the 21st. Okay, where were we? Number 13. The shepherds, then the magi, came to the manger. False. Yeah, it doesn't say who came first, and I don't want to give any other answers away to the questions, but they would not have been together at the same time. Luke 2:16 and Matthew 2:11. You can fact check on that one. Okay, number 14. Here we go. The shepherds with the magi saw his star. Yeah, and I kind of gave that away again. Like they weren't together when that would have happened. They would have followed the star, both of them, but certainly not together. Well, no, the shepherds went in to see what they had just heard. The magi were going to follow that star. And that's in Matthew chapter 2. Okay, let's see, number 15. The magi were from the east. That's true. That doesn't mean that wise people couldn't come from the west. But it just means that they're from the east. And that's, that's in Matthew chapter 2. We have proof of that. Okay, we're almost done. Hang in there. Number 16. King Herod sent the magi to Bethlehem. Yeah, Matthew chapter 2 verse 8 actually says that King Herod sent the magi to Bethlehem. And again, why did he send them? He said that he could worship. Wink, wink. But what was he really trying to do? He was trying to eliminate the opposition. And we have proof of that because later on he's going to try to do that. Okay, number 17. The magi arrived on camels. What? Can this be true? Is it possible that they didn't arrive on camels? It's possible that they also they came on camels. They came from a long way. They came from the east. There's lots of reasons to believe that they came on camels. We just don't know for sure. Okay, number 17. Oh, wait, you're right. You're right. 18, thank you. 3 magi visited Bethlehem. Yeah. Now, what are we basing the 3 on? Well, there had to be at least 2. Some guy could have been like, hey, he's so good, I'm bringing 2 gifts. We know that there's plural, and we also know what? There's 3 gifts. I saw a really great video that I wanted to share, but we didn't have time for it. But it's called the Fourth Wise Man, and basically it's kind of a humorous short clip. 4 wise men. One of them was supposed to bring like jade or something else. He was supposed to bring it, and then he lost it. And he's the wise man that always keeps messing up. Like they're traveling there, and he's always the one late. And he's like, guys, I lost it. I can't find it. And so they're like, well, he's like, but I have another gift. I can bring. I don't know what to do, but I'll get something. And they're like, what are you going to get? And he's like, hummus. I'll take hummus because everybody loves that. And it was kind of a spoof off of it. And basically the other 3 wise men said, you know what? You just go home. And he said, you know what? You're right. I probably should go. He goes, I was just so excited about seeing the Savior that I really didn't think that we could bring him any gift that's worthy of him. I just was kind of hoping that he would be the gift for all of us, because there's nothing that I could give that would pay back. I just hope he's the kind of Savior that forgives people like me who can't seem to get anything right. And it's just a really powerful story of reminding us all that of what he did for us. So, with that being said, we don't know. It just fits really well to think that if there's 3 gifts that are given, there are 3 different wise men that each carried one. So, what were the 3 gifts that were given? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And believe it or not, I think this would have been really, really helpful at the time for a young couple who just had a baby, who's about to flee their own country and go hide out in Egypt. And so these weren't just token gifts. These would have been beneficial at a time where Mary and Joseph really could have used that. Because remember, they're not going to get to go home like they had planned to. They're going to have to flee because of the birth of Jesus and the edict from Herod. Okay. Number 19. The Magi came to a house where the child and his mother were. This is true. So, this is, you can look up 2 verse 11. Now, one thing that is interesting to note is that Joseph's presence isn't mentioned there. That doesn't mean he wasn't there. It doesn't mean that he left the scene. We're going to hear that Joseph is around when Jesus is 12, and that's the last we're going to learn or hear of Joseph. So, it is safe to believe that Mary could have been widowed before Jesus started his ministry. We hear nothing of Joseph, only to say that when they see Jesus, they say, "Isn't this the carpenter's son?" So beyond that, we don't hear anything of Joseph, so we don't really know. Just a fun fact, and I can't remember the number now. Somebody can fact check me. Was Jesus the only son of Mary and Joseph? No. In fact, if I remember the numbers, I think it comes down to he had 5 other brothers, or maybe 4 other brothers, and at least 2 sisters. If I remember, because I think at one point it mentions, it'll list the name of Jesus' brothers, but then it says his sisters. So most likely, Jesus, not only was he not an only child, he could have been the oldest of at least 7 kids. So, just something for you to think about. So, the Magi came to the house where the child and his mother were. We don't know exactly where that was. We just know it was not baby Jesus in a manger with the shepherds around at that time. And then the last one. After finding the child, the Magi were warned not to go back to Herod. This is true in Matthew chapter 2, verse 12. Mentions that. And again, this is going to lead to a very, very dark time in the history of Israel. Babies are going to be slaughtered. Now, I just want you to let that sink in. I want you to think about this. The all-knowing God sent his son in just some of the most desperate of circumstances. There is upheaval. There is turmoil. He is going to send him to a country that is occupied by Rome. Okay, there are laws that they have to keep. They have taxes they have to pay. People are angry. They're upset. The people are furious. On a regular basis, there are uproars that are starting. There are murders that are taking place. When Jesus was just a little boy, there was a man by the name of Judas who started an uprising that was later squashed by Rome. And the way they did that was crucifying approximately 2,000 men in one day. So I'm not trying to get political, okay? Don't misunderstand me. But sometimes myself, I think our government is a little crazy. They're wanting us to do things that we don't want to do. Okay, they tell us where we can eat and where we can't eat and where we have to wear masks. And I know that is an affront to our freedom. But I just want you to know, and I don't know if this provides you with any solace or just makes you more angry, but I just want you to remember, Jesus was born in the time when governments were executing people with very little reason. They didn't like the way that you chose to worship, and so they were killing people. There was literally a king at the time who was paranoid and afraid that a baby was going to take his place, and he made a law and edict that would send soldiers into the houses of people and take their newborn baby boys and kill them. And I'm not saying that to say that in 2020 we're like, oh, let's just roll over and like say, oh, let them tromp on us and step on us. I just want you to know that this was a time when Jesus was born in, that he experienced hardship and chaos and darkness and despair just like we do today. And so I want to close out this class with just this one thought. Remember, it was dark before God said, let there be light. And it was dark when Noah closed that door and his family waited in that boat for 7 days before a drop of rain. It was dark when the Israelites were wandering around in the desert for 40 years. It was dark when Jesus came into this world. And so don't give up hope. Even in these dark times, it's when God works in powerful ways. And I want you to know, I believe that he will work through you this week to shine his light in these dark times. And it's because of his Holy Spirit and his love and his power he has for us. And so as you go out this week, look at that tree and give thanks to a God who would give his son whatever time of the year it would come. Let's give thanks for Jesus. I want to close this out in prayer, and then I've got one super quick announcement. Father God, thank you again for sending your son Jesus into this world, reminding us that you are with us. Lord, I am thankful for all the ways that we've been able to look at the things that you did while you were on this earth. But Lord, I believe that you are still doing great things today. And so Lord, I just pray that you will use us. Let us be a conduit of your love and your grace wherever we go this week. Lord, I just pray that we will shine your light and let the name of your son Jesus be lifted up, for he is worthy of our praise. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Okay, real quickly, one announcement. I believe Guy has already posted on Facebook. For those of you who would like to hear our Wednesday night podcast that's going to be coming this Wednesday, you can go on right now and listen to it because I know you're so anxious. And for those of you who didn't listen to the Thanksgiving one, shame on you. Go listen to it because they kind of tie in one together. Second thing, we will not meet here on Wednesday night. The lights will be off. The doors will be closed. It'll be December 23rd, and so we will not be meeting then. However, we not only did we record the podcast audio like we normally do, we also recorded on video. So at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, you can gather around your TV or your mobile device, and it will do a Facebook premiere. So it will look like it's coming on live. And from 6 o'clock, you can watch it. And then after that, you can watch it anytime, as many times as you'd like. If you want to boost the video count up, watch it 12 times each. That'd be awesome. That was a joke. So you can do that then. So God bless you all. May you enjoy this Christmas season worshiping a God who came to us. Thank you for being here. You're dismissed. Thank you for your message that we saw. That was really, really kind of you. Oh, I've got to show you something real fast. Okay, my